and I lose control of my vehicle. I see smoke, dust all around me. Oh shit, I got to get out. Go to open the door won't open, but what caught my attention more was nothing below my waist was working.
A near-fatal accident under the influence left Josh Anderson paralyzed, but didn't stop him from drinking and using. So what did? He'll answer that and many other important questions on this episode of Silver Ladder.
You're listening to Silver Ladder, a podcast built on real-life, inspiring stories of those who have faced and overcome challenges related to mental health, addiction and recovery, grief, parenting, and much more. Real, raw, relatable. Silver Ladder.
Welcome to Silver Ladder. I'm Shane Watson, mental health educator and consultant. Before we meet today's guest, it's important to note the Silver Ladder podcast may contain mature content, including explicit language and references to topics such as drug use, suicide, or violence. This show is intended for adults only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by guests of the show are their own and not necessarily the views of the host. Sharing them does not constitute an endorsement by the Silver Ladder Podcast or Silver Ladder LLC. Likewise, nothing shared on the show is intended to replace professional advice. As always, consult your physician, attorney, licensed counselor, and local record store owner before making any personal changes or decisions. Our guest today is Josh Anderson. Josh is a therapist, a budding painter, and an individual 17 years into long-term recovery. He joins us now on Silver Ladder. Josh, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Josh and I met a number of years ago when we were in treatment. As a matter of fact, late 2005, early 2006.
Early 06, yeah.
You came in on my last week.
Right.
And so that's how we originally crossed paths. And in recent years, we've reconnected when you've had me come speak to some of the groups that you run as a therapist, which we'll get into that here in a little bit. But to give me more background on you, because I don't know the answers to some of these questions, and give our listeners background on you, where it started, and we're going to talk about where it went. How does your story begin? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And what was life like for you as a kid?
So born and raised in Minnesota, born in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Early years, I remember getting moved down to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, due to my dad got a job down there. So we relocated. I was down there for kindergarten and first grade, then remember getting moved back up to Minnesota, Maple Grove, Minnesota, second grade, I would say. Normal middle-class suburb life. My sister was born in 84, so just shortly before I think we left Iowa. But I remember that year returning to Minnesota being very formative. It's come up a lot in my own therapy, as being a sort of epicenter, if you will, for a lot of my own quote-unquote trauma, small t trauma, I guess. 8 years old, a lot of inner child work, and some of that work they had us doing in rehab. That age came up a lot, which makes sense. A big life event, moving back to Minnesota, not knowing anybody, having already moved several times, but very happy home. Mom and dad both worked, as I recall, which led to them not being around a lot, but that's just how things were.
Back in the day, that was normal.
Yeah. I remember second grade being the one, I think, they would wake me up, but I got myself off to the school bus in the morning. I'd come home after school, and a lot of times they weren't home yet. Still hadn't picked up my sister from daycare, and there were, this is Minnesota, so in the winter, sun sets 5 p.m. ish. And as an 8-year-old kid, now I can see how that was very traumatic and scary. There were 1 or 2 times where I would call grandma and grandpa because mom and dad weren't home. No cell phones back then. Can't find out where anybody's at. You're just sitting and waiting. So I see that age now through the hindsight of a therapist's eye as being very formative, whether it's attachment styles or, I hate using the word abandonment because that's not what it was. It was just how things were. But it led to a lot of feelings of aloneness, so to speak, but also has simultaneously, I think, was the core of what led me to be a very individual person. I don't need a lot of assistance and things, and I'm okay with my own solitude and being alone. Now, that can trickle into dangerous territories with isolation, but that's just kind of always how my mentality has been. So, yeah, childhood was great. It was great.
So I can see already in you talking about your childhood, you recognizing challenges that arose from the type of childhood you had. Again, being uprooted and moved. And I talk to parents about that being a thing that can affect their kids. Then having that time where you were by yourself quite a bit. But at the same time, you're also recognizing strengths and unique things about your personality that came from that situation as well. Looking at that isolation or that loneliness or that being uprooted or things like that, were those factors in what led you to drink or use for the first time? If not, what led to that first try of something?
So I was just sharing my story with my patients last week for the first time in a long time. They hear bits and pieces of it. But I've never done the chronological in a very long time, and nothing led to it. It was just normal, quote unquote, experimentation, right? It's what the older kids in the neighborhood were doing that we always looked up to, that we attached ourselves to, that we wanted to be like. So I think, I don't know, 15, 16-ish, somewhere in there, getting some older people at work to buy us liquor. I think I got my first job at 15 at Subway. There were some 21-year-olds that worked there, and we could get them to buy us some liquor. First marijuana use probably around that same time, but again, it was because that's just
what you did.
It's just what you did.
It was around.
Yep. It wasn't trying to numb out, rebel, or escape anything.
And you think that even looking back, by the way, because obviously as a therapist, you examine, you know what to look back on. So even looking back, you're saying this wasn't a trauma-initiated thing. It was, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm 15 years old. My buddies are doing this.
For sure. And this is all, yes, through the lens of hindsight and education and experience. Now I see that as being total quintessential experimentation.
I think that's important for people to hear, by the way, because in some of the episodes I've done, the 2 people I've interviewed already, we talk about there being, a lot of times being trauma at the root of things like that. It's important for people to hear your kind of story as well, to know they don't have to be in an environment where there's trauma or tragedy or something. Sometimes it's that natural teen or preteen curiosity, or good old fashioned, like, oh, my buddies are doing it, I want to do it too.
With that same mindset and that looking back hindsight, it wasn't long. Now what I see, and even just the weed smoking, is I didn't use like a lot of my friends did. And this is all hindsight, but I was that one that wanted to always do more. Let's smoke more. Let's, and they're ready to call it a night, and let's go. I'm purchasing more often than they are. I see that now through hindsight and all these years that I was using much like a drug addict at a very early stage in my using.
Did you recognize at the time I'm different from my friends.
Not at all.
Again, in the mind of a
Not at
15,
all.
16-year-old kid, sometimes that, that self-awareness is just not
is
there
all
in the teen
hindsight.
years. Okay.
I see what I was doing now. The girl I had a crush on didn't look at me or feel about me the same way as I did her. That led to feelings of jealousy and anxiety, and let's smoke a joint. Got a test, got school project coming up, haven't quite prepared, yada, yada. Let's smoke a joint. I see now, again, hindsight, I was seeking chemical solutions for very normal teenage feelings. And the thing about it is it was very effective.
So did you feel like I have found the solution? Like this is the answer?
No, that would come many, many years later.
Okay.
But again, through the hindsight, I see what was. And even if you would have asked me then, do you think you're trying to cope with some uncomfortable feelings? I don't know that I just would have had the mindset to understand what that was.
I think most teenagers don't.
No.
You're not really thinking that deeply inward or
No.
that far ahead. So from the alcohol and the weed at 15, 16, 17 in there, where did it go from there? What did your progression look like, and was it gradual or rapid?
Again, what I think is being normal progression. I remember shortly after finishing high school, I think, using cocaine for the first time. Prior to that, we used mushrooms a few times. All these, what we told ourselves were natural substances, came from Mother Earth, must be okay. It wasn't until at age 19, fled the nest, and rather than stay in local hometown Minnesota, me and a group of buddies came down here to Arizona. The family had been visiting Arizona for many years, so I had a lay of the land. I fell in love with it at an early age, and hey, rather than stay up here where it's cold as fuck all the time, let's do something really cool and go to Arizona. And so me and 3 or 4 of my buddies packed up the cars and came down here. Now, once we were down here, that's when the wheels really started coming off. Experimentation. Closest parent figure is 2,000 miles away. Let's have a blast. That was my going to college, living in the dorms experience.
A bunch of dudes in a house together?
Yeah. Yep. Pills, ecstasy, more cocaine. Those were the big ones. Drinking more often. Was enrolled in community college at the time. That was an epic failure. That was just a time suck that I didn't have time for. I was trying to work, make money. We had rent to pay. So that was not going well. At that time, got involved with a girl. She was living in Sedona. So now my attention is really pulled away from any kind of schooling and that scene of let's just have fun and party.
Looking back at that era, looking back when you moved here and it was a bunch of guys in the house and it was really starting to get out of hand, or even earlier than that, when you're 15, 16, you're drinking, you're smoking weed a little bit. Looking back, do you feel like there was anything that someone around you could have done at either one of those points to stop you from heading in that direction? Or is it like, no, I had to just figure it out for myself?
No, this was normal party lifestyle. At that point, I was still socially drinking and using. It was not a daily thing, except for weed. We were smoking weed daily. The liquor or even the pills or some of the harder drug, ecstasy, stuff like that. That was very random events, parties. It was New Year's Eve. It was birthdays,
special occasions.
Yep,
Okay.
Very sporadic.
And you managed to keep that particular substance to those special occasions, or it was a matter of that's just when it happened to show up?
No, that was all still.
So you were still kind of self-regulating a little bit.
Social user. Yep. Except for the weed. We were full-blown weed addicts, I guess. We didn't mind. We thought that was funny, but didn't see a harm in that substance. And looking back and now seeing the social acceptance of that now, yeah, there's no way you could have convinced me that that would be a problem. It was a gateway, which kills me to acknowledge, because I think there are gateway substances. If it was okay to smoke weed day in, day out, all day, then that made it okay to try something else. And if I tried something else, then that was okay to, ramp it up and try something else. I think it opens the door.
I noticed that with my own story.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up one day randomly doing heroin out of nowhere.
No.
Every substance led to something that was like one step up that staircase, because everything that I did, and I used it without there being an immediate catastrophe that I noticed, because my brain chemistry was changing and I wouldn't catch that till years later.
Yeah.
It would convince me, okay, this is not that big of a deal. Maybe this next thing's not that big of a deal. And so it can be deceptively gradual.
Yeah, it wouldn't be until certain life events.
And that's what I want to ask you about too. So what was the first point where you felt like you acknowledged to yourself things might be getting out of control? Did you acknowledge it? Or when you realized it, did you stuff that away and like, I'm not going to...
Yeah. So there was a very small window of time where it appeared that the wheels were coming off and this was creeping into a territory where this was no longer just having fun. So at this point, early 2000, late 1999, I'd moved to Sedona thinking a geographical change will help. Was not doing well in school. Needed to just kind of reset. And probably, if I'm being super honest, I was chasing the girl. The girl was up there. I knew her through her little sister, who I was in the same grade as in high school and junior high. They were living, two sisters and a brother living in this house at Village of Oak Creek. Loved it up there. Who wouldn't? So I was going up there already as often as possible. And so it just made sense to relocate. So I've relocated. I'm living in the Village of Oak Creek at this point, got a job at one of the timeshare resorts up there. Those people who catch you as you're walking down the main street. Hey, you want a free gift? All you got to do is sit in on this 90-minute presentation and you can have this wonderful gift. So I worked for one of them. I think I was distributing the gifts, I think. Well, one of the ladies I was working with at that timeshare resort was on pain management. I knew nothing about that. I didn't know what that was. She was a bigger gal, a little overweight, explained it to me as she was in a car accident, knee surgery, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Well, one day she asks if I could run to the pharmacy for her to pick up her prescriptions. Sure, I've got a lunch break here. She's busy. Okay, so I go and pick these up, and what my memory tells me is seeing two of the biggest tubs of pain pills that I'd ever seen. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. Maybe it was just my 20-year-old brain salivating at the sight of this, but it was Percocet and methadone. And I didn't know what those were. Hadn't had any experience with that, but I helped myself. I'm driving back to the office and I am helping myself. This is taxation. I've done a good deed.
It is a service fee.
Yes, this is the service fee. And I bring them to her and then she gives me my service fee, not knowing I had already helped myself to a more appropriate service fee. So there's this small window of time where my average day was 6 or 7 Percocet, 4 or 5 methadone, smoke weed on lunch break. And now, because this is the Village of Oak Creek, small town, I learned very quickly that I could drink at one of the bars up there as long as I went with some of the locals, just kind of blend into the crowd. I'm only 20 at this time, but a minor. And so there is this 2-week period of time where, my days are consumed by this substance. And at this time, it is how it is affecting my brain chemistry, I guess, is everything is amazing. I remember remarking to someone that the way these make me feel, I feel like John Travolta in the opening scene of Saturday Night
Fever.
Thank you. Walking down this, just
Strutting down the street.
Strutting. And all very serviceable. You know, I was very functional, but looking back, and I think somewhere there's photographic evidence of all this, that this kid is on a downward spiral. At this point in time, the girl and I were splitting up, but still living together with her little sister and older brother, and that was super awkward. Led to more feelings of discomfort, jealousy, sadness, inadequacy. What's wrong with me?
That's a big one.
Yeah. And so those pills worked tremendously for that. Now we are getting into full-blown numbing, escaping, and avoiding feelings. Chemical solution at its utmost. And that led to a very major life-changing event. Typical day, working, pills, go to the bar that night, leave the bar. I remember remarking to a friend, I can't believe I am walking so functionally considering all the substances I have consumed. Took some people home that night is what I was told, because I don't remember. Go home, and the girl's car is in the driveway. And oh my God, I don't want to deal with this. These are gross feelings. So I pull out of the driveway, and I go to try to reconnect with some of the people I was at the bar with. And I am upset, and I'm driving very fast through this neighborhood in the village of Oak Creek, very dark, no street lights, and I lose control of my vehicle. And I go through a few drainage ditches. Car comes to a stop. I see smoke, dust all around me. Oh shit, I got to get out. Go to open the door. The door won't open, but what caught my attention more was nothing below my waist was working. And what had happened was I had hit my head on the roof of the car, and it created a compression fracture. So it compressed down my spine until it got to my L1 vertebrae and shattered it. The surgeons who did the surgery to fix everything said it looked like someone had smashed an ice cube with a hammer. There's just shards of vertebrae that had then damaged my spinal cord. And so I am a incomplete L1 paraplegic, and life will forever be different. And I've got this perception at that time of what life will be like, and essentially in my young brain, it is over. Any hopes, dreams, aspirations, done. Family now has to care for someone in a wheelchair. My friends now have to, deal with or make time for someone in a wheelchair. I am now this burden to everybody that I care about. And that was the mindset. And this is February of 2000, I suppose. And I remember people at my bedside in Flagstaff, that's where my surgery was, saying, we're here for you, Josh. Everything will be okay. God has a plan. Everything happens for a reason. What? What is that? Easy for you to fucking say. As you stand next to my bed, telling me God has a plan, everything happens for a reason? How fucking dare you? How fucking dare you? And it was many, many, many years late till I see what that plan is. But while I'm in it, I don't know how to cope with that. And what I had taught myself from ages 14 to 20 was any uncomfortable, any discomfort, any curveball life throws at you, chemical solution is effective, and it works immediately. That's all I knew. I didn't know to talk about it. I didn't know what trauma was. I didn't know that. I just figured this was, a life-changing event that, now you got to figure out how to deal with. And I don't know how to deal with any of that.
So the accident did not get you to stop?
Not at all. It was another 8 years. I remember a nurse coming into my bed. So by this point, I've been moved down to St. Joseph's for physical therapy. Here in Phoenix.
Okay.
Yep. And I remember a night nurse coming in. She's doing her rounds, introduces herself to me and says, hey, there are AA and NA meetings that get brought to the hospital at night. If you think you'd be interested, I can make sure that we get you down there. And I laugh in her face. I am 20 years old. This was bad luck. This was just one of those 1 in a million. No way. That is not me. I did this, which I never had a problem from the jump recognizing. And I'm till this day very grateful for. I did this. I was behind the wheel. Number one, nobody was with me in my car. Thank you, God. Nobody else was on the road, and nobody did this to me. I wasn't clipped, T-boned by another driver. This was 100% on Josh. Josh got himself into this mess. Josh will get himself out of this mess. And only at that point in time, I don't see a way out of this mess. This is just how do we cope with this mess? And I had no answer to that. I wanted to make my life full-blown, just nothing but physical therapy. About a month after my accident, I start getting some return function in my legs, which was extremely promising to me. And I wanted to just full-time job therapy at that point. But my outpatient therapists and my family were telling me, Josh, you're 20 years old. You can't make your life just physical therapy. Like you do have a life. You need to go back to school, get a job. Your friends are still down here, reconnect and go live your life. And so under protest, who knows how much protest I actually put up, but in my mind, like, fine, I'll, just whatever makes people happy. Okay, I will do that. And got really lucky to get connected with a job straight out of physical therapy that was in the durable medical equipment field, which in English means wheelchairs and wheelchair lifts. There was a company that would come visit newly injured people. A couple of those guys were in wheelchairs, and they would kind of just mentor us, like, hey, nothing's over. You're going to live a full life. And so when I needed to look for work, those were the closest guys I knew that, could kind of help coach me through this. And so I got lucky and got a front desk job there. So, okay, we're back at work. Check. Reconnecting with the friends. That was, we played Little League together. Of course, I can't wait. And that was very different, though, because what I see now through hindsight is that I thought very differently than my friends mentally. I don't know. There was always something that separated me and how my friends thought, whether it was just maturity or just personality, or, they were my buddies, loved them, they loved me. But when there could be times when I just felt apart from them, not a part of them. And so I'm reconnecting with them, and we're going and doing 21-year-old things, going to the bars, watching Monday Night Football. And, but this time was different. I'd go to these places with my friends, and I couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sensation every time, no matter where we went, that all eyes were on the kid in the wheelchair. Oh, look at that. It just felt like just an avalanche of pity and sorrow and what's wrong with you. This is all in my head. And I don't know how to cope with that. And, we're smoking weed still and doing our regular thing, but that wasn't helping.
Were you being prescribed as a result of the situation? No, you were not getting opioids at this point?
Extremely lucky. Don't suffer from any chronic pain that's unbearable.
Were you still seeking them at
Nope.
this point?
Nope, never
Okay.
even got. I don't even recall being prescribed them in the hospital.
Okay.
A lot of guys in wheelchairs suffer from leg spasms. I get them rarely, and there's no pain on earth like that, but not to a level where it's constant and every day that I need to be medicated. Extremely lucky. But I know that I could shop for those prescriptions very easily. I show you my x-ray and half my body is metal, and of course you're in pain. Just never made that connection. That whole idea of doctor shopping, I went straight for the street doctor, I guess. I had a friend who would later, somewhere in this time, this is 2003, 2004-ish, introduces me to black tar heroin. And in my brain, heroin was that line in the sand. Always.
Oh, I'm never going to do that.
No, gross. For some reason, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but Samuel L. Jackson played this epic heroin junkie in it. And that was the mentality of like, don't become like that, and that was the line in the sand. But this wasn't using a needle. And curiosity takes over. He then later makes the connection for me. Well, you were using Percocet and methadone before the accident. That's exactly what this is. Only 1,000 times cheaper and way stronger.
So you were smoking foils then?
Yep.
Okay.
And so I try it. I get sick. But the puke and rally is over. And Shane, the euphoria that sets in, not to glamorize it at all, but when that set in, my brain went to, oh, God does have a plan. This did happen for a reason. And the reason was to introduce me to this substance because this is the answer to everything. You don't care. You don't hurt. You don't feel. You don't everything, but yet you're still functional enough to go do what you need to do. It was like coming home. Now I could go out. Didn't care what people were thinking or not thinking about me. Now hanging out with my buddies felt like hanging out with my buddies, it just made sense. And it was I was always very functional with it. Never went to needles, never became homeless as a result, never got locked up in prison as a result. So in my brain,
You could justify it.
this is okay.
Yep.
I would later come to realize those were my not yets, right? That given enough time, should I have continued, they just hadn't happened yet. And in some weird case, my prison is a physical prison. My despair was all emotional. My story is just, I can relate to a lot of people. It's just a different story. My rock bottom was very movable. This accident should have been something where, I swear off any substances, never drink and drive again. Oh my God, so lucky to be alive, which I am. That's just not what my path was.
That's often not how addiction works either. And that's why I asked that question. It's important for people to understand just how powerful addiction is, that the things that people who don't drink or use see and they say, well, that would get me to stop.
Right.
Yes, it should. When you're thinking clearly and rationally and in a healthy way, those are the things that should get you to stop. But the problem is when you're trapped in that web of addiction, you're not thinking clearly. You're not making good decisions. So you have been introduced to heroin at this point, and your description was perfect. I don't think that's glamorizing it. It is so important to be honest about what it feels like so that those who've never used it, who are hearing this, maybe who have family members that are caught up in that, or actually now heroin is kind of hard to find, maybe fentanyl or whatever, who don't understand the allure of it, the way you described it is exactly perfect. Everything is just great. I mean, everything is amazing. And one time heard someone describe it as a warm hug from their mom.
Yes.
And that's heartbreaking for mothers out there to hear this, that, the love of a mother is reduced to black tar heroin. But it's like, that's that level of comfort and everything is okay now.
Yeah.
So where did that go from there with the heroin, and what eventually made you decide to get sober? What was the end like? Because you said the rock bottom was movable, and that's true.
Never had any overdoses. It just couldn't keep up financially. I think I was spending upwards to $100 a day. And if I could have, I would have spent more. But financing that was impossible. And so for many years I'm using and was still very functional. At one point I'd gone back to college to finish my bachelor's degree, did great, straight A's. And then there reaches this point, and I think for every drug addict or alcoholic, they will speak about this, that you become sick and tired of being sick and tired. And no matter how loaded I would get, there was always still this still soft voice that was speaking to me. Like, come on, Josh, really? Is this it going to be it? Is this how you carry your life? Is this your life for however long? You're capable of more. And for the last year, I was done. I wanted to be done. I just feared the sickness, right?
Oh, the withdrawals from opioids.
And at this point, I am staying with my mom. Can't financially make my own place work. I'm borrowing money left and right, and I get this phone call from my dad. And it was very cut to the chase, no bullshit. And he says, kid, it's either going to be us or the drugs, but it's not going to be both. And you have to choose. And the fear sets in and the panic sets in. Let me call you back. And okay, how can I make this work to where I can still have both, right? And this moment of clarity, as they talk about, of just give up, dude. Just give up. Stop fighting. And so, okay, Dad, yes, let's do it. I just don't want to get sick. And so we get a detox done, and it's okay. You're not done, kid. It wasn't just getting off the drugs, but they wanted me to get treatment. And so that led to finding a 30-day residential facility here in Phoenix where we met, that then started planting the seeds of recovery. And nothing has been the same ever since. I have not stayed sober since that day, entering treatment, but the seeds were planted. The fellowship started to grow from there. Here we are, almost 20 years later, still connected. And for all we know, the only two that are, still sober. But from that point, then, when you stay sober for 30 days, yes, I was in a locked facility, but I mean, you could leave anytime you wanted.
And some people did. We saw that.
They encouraged us. Don't just jump the wall.
Walk out the front door.
Walk out the front door. Take your stuff with you and go. No, this isn't anything that's forced on anybody. And so, I mean, I was making a choice to stay. And I come out of that 30-day sober, feeling amazing. Everybody's proud of me again. And what I see now is being the mistake was, okay, my mentality was, okay, now we just be sober. That's just it. Just be sober now. Failing to really put any work into it. Totally missed everything that they had suggested, at the meetings and the sponsorship and the sober living. And I go back home to my mom's, and it's hard to explain what that feeling was, but it was, hey, I was just using in the same place 30 days ago. So doesn't feel right to try to now come back into this and try to, just be sober. I had some friends from the rehab go to sober living. And so I thought to reach out to them, find out more about the sober living, what's it like, what's it involved. And, probably the best decision aside from going to treatment was entering the sober living. It taught me so much. Because what doesn't work is for a lot of people, what doesn't work is removing them from one environment, getting them cleaned up for 30 days, and then putting them right back in that
the
same
environment with the same people.
And those people was my mother. So surely it should be safe. Surely it should be okay. But I was getting away with everything there. I was, and I needed to be in a much more supportive, held accountable type environment. And so I move into this house. It's a sober living with other guys I was in treatment with, some other guys that I hadn't known. But what I started to learn there was, okay, the steps that it takes. This is how we maintain this sobriety thing. I think I stayed sober about 3 months, and I'm out to dinner with someone, and I could tell we're feeling each other out for getting some alcohol, right? Because we were in treatment for drugs, so surely this must mean alcohol is still okay. Didn't really have a problem with it. It was always a social event type party thing. I didn't have, the little brown bag with the bottle that I needed to sip on all day like the alcoholic does. This has to be okay. And so we get a couple of drinks. The sky doesn't fall. Nothing bad happens. Yes, I'm still in sober living, but they're expecting me to use, if anything, not drink. And I get away with it. And so for a while, I'm drinking while in sober living. I'm not using drugs, and that was the main goal. In my mind, I'm sober because it was heroin that was ruining my life. It was crystal meth that was, really taking my life down. That's the things I had a problem with, not alcohol. It's everywhere. It's acceptable. But what started doing, and almost immediately, was using alcohol like I used heroin. It was every day, and it was great quantities because it provided that chemical shift, that chemical solution to everything. And so after 6 or so months of living in this sober living, I make the genius decision to get involved into a relationship. It had been suggested to all of us in treatment to avoid relationships for the first year. You're not ready. You're still developing. You're growing up. You don't know how to take care of yourself yet.
You're still trying to figure out who you are.
How could you ever be involved in a relationship? Well, the house owner of the sober living I was at was showing his brand new house to his ex-girlfriend, and we caught each other's eyes. And so we start communicating with each other, connecting, and now we're involved, and nobody knows until somebody finds out, and that leads me to get kicked out of the sober living, which in my brain at that point, it was time to go. God, needed this bed for somebody else at this point.
It's amazing how we can justify things. Yeah. We can say, oh man, I am serving a noble spiritual purpose by doing this.
I'm 7-8 months sober at this point. Yes, drinking, but surely I'm ready to go. I go get my own place. I'm seeing this girl. We're now in a relationship and everything feels great. But what I'm missing this whole point is quickly becoming my recovery. She is quickly becoming my spirituality. She is quickly becoming my higher power. All of my attention is devoted to this one person who likes me, is falling in love with me. And if they like me and are falling in love with me, well, then I must not be a total piece of shit. And if they like me, well, then maybe I am likable. And so now we're involved in this codependent, it's a toxic relationship. My belly button birthday comes around and I still haven't used drugs. I'm 11 months sober, but we're drinking. It's my birthday. And somebody puts down some cocaine and asks if I want any. And I don't even hesitate. I'd been drinking. I didn't seem to even have the opportunity to weigh it out or understand what that could lead to. And so now I've just blown 11 months of sobriety in my mind out the window. I justify it by telling myself, well, Josh, could you ever imagine a time when you only used once in 11 months? To use drugs only once in 11 months. What an amazing accomplishment. Bravo. You're the best. And that's how I convince it to the girlfriend at the time. She understood Josh and drugs cannot meet ever. Alcohol, okay. People think as long as it's not your substance of choice, then it's okay. Again, not quite understanding that the cross addiction and how easy that connection is to make. And what I am cross addicting with is a female and alcohol. And so I'd been using this whole time, essentially. I wasn't using heroin. And so I'm trying to live my life, and I am going to work, and I am paying my bills, and I'm involved in this relationship, and I am now recreationally using cocaine and meth, but not like before. Thank you. I've learned my lesson now. It just can't be a daily thing.
This sounds so familiar.
Right. But what I didn't understand is, just because it wasn't heroin didn't mean it wasn't a problem. I have a drug of choice for a reason. You lay these things down in front of you. I choose this one every time. Yes, I can satisfy myself with this one for an indeterminate amount of time, but eventually, given enough time, I'm going to go back to this substance. And I inevitably go back to using heroin. Okay, we're just going to control it more like we controlled the cocaine and the meth, and that's how we're going to do it. The girlfriend can't find out because she will lose her shit. So I've got to hide it from everybody. I've got a job to maintain. And at this point in time, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out of AA. So they can't know, but I've got to keep up appearances. Something happens. My cover is blown. The girlfriend finds my stash. That's it. She's out. She's leaving. I told you if this ever happened, I'm done with you. How could you? And I'm devastated. I'm so remorseful, and managed to convince her to come back, that this will never happen again. I promise. I swear to God. She comes back, that takes, and for a few months, everything's great. I'm back going to meetings again. I'm working with my sponsor regularly. He's made a connection with my girlfriend, so it's just a layer of accountability. Everything's great. And after a few months, I can feel I'm starting to earn some trust. And that's a mistake for early recovery Josh, because as soon as you start giving him some trust, he will weaponize that and use it against you. And so I start dabbling again and using here and there, being much more sneaky. We've learned a lesson. Here's how we can't do things. This is what she knows to look for. So we'll just, drug addicts always think they're always so sneaky and nobody will ever know and find out, but your cover's blown from the jump. People that know you, love you, care about you, know how you act, know your personality, know your mannerisms, And when those start to change just a little bit, your cover's blown. And so she's giving me the side eye. She's questioning me more. I'm losing a little bit of trust. I'm trying to throw that back into her face. How could you? And my cover's blown again. She finds my stash. Oh my God, how could you? I told you, how dare you? Leaves. That's it. She's gone. Being a good drug addict and the gift of gab, I can convince her how here this is going to be different, and I promise and I swear, and oh my God, I'm so sorry. Never happen again. Let's just try to make this work, and here's how I'll make it work, and this is why it will be be different this time. And she comes back again.
Okay.
I think if I remember correctly, there were 3 times. This would total happen about 3 times. Well, what I learn now and see through hindsight is that not only is Josh, drug addict in recovery, has codependent tendencies, but he can be a hostage taker, right? This girl, probably from that first time of catching me, had stopped being my girlfriend and now was this hostage. I could convince her, use love and affection, her own codependency, and lure her to come back, and here's how it'll be different. Meanwhile, I change nothing about my behavior or my actions, right? But this time will be different. Complete insanity. So I'm sober, and I am actually doing the deal this time, and this is probably early 2008. I'm going to meetings, working my steps. I'm like, Shane, I'm doing the deal this time. I'm about 6 months sober, and we're home watching TV, me and the girl, and she turns to me and says, I can't do this anymore. I can't. What? What are you talking about? I can't. I am in constant fear. I'm always wondering where you are. I'm always thinking, is he lying? Every day, I'm waiting. Is today the day something happens that makes Josh go out and use? I'm fine. I'm doing great. 6 months sober. Here's my coin. No, I can't live like this anymore. I am done. Sure. This time she was done, and there was no talking her to come back. I was sober and trying to convince her to come back, and here's how things are going to be different and what's going on. I don't get it. Why are you doing this? How could you? You. And she's gone. And I do what I know best. Going to a meeting didn't make me feel better about it. Calling my sponsor didn't make me feel better about it. Nothing was going to hurt that heart pain. And except for the thing that had worked for so long in my life. And so I go back and I start using meth. I had some friends at the time, was her older sister actually was using meth. And so I connect with them. And I'm sad and I'm heartbroken trying to get advice from her, but really what we're doing is we're just using, and this is how I'm trying to take the pain off of it. And the girlfriend finds out that I'm using. Naturally, it's her older sister. And she tells me, see, I told you something would happen in life and you would choose, rather than work it out and talk through it and, do what was difficult, you would turn to a substance. And in my head at that time, no, I wouldn't have done this had you not left.
You made me do this.
You made me do this. This was you. And I couldn't see at that time what she was, the point she was trying to make to you. I love you. I would never have done this. And Josh, how can you love me? You don't love yourself. That's ridiculous. Of course I love you. Who cares if I don't love myself? I love you, right? All these things that really now we're tapping into what are probably the core issues behind my repeated relapses. And this is not just 3 relapses. This is dozens of relapses. There's the times that I would try to quit on my own. There's the times I would try to just switch substances. Don't use this one, use this one. The times I would try to don't use before 5 o'clock.
All the rules that you make.
Failed every time.
Guidelines.
Failed every time. I consider, and I talk to my patients, letting them know that I am one of those chronic relapsers. I don't know how many times I've relapsed. Did I want to give up and figure I couldn't do this? Of course. But that didn't take away from the fact that I tasted sobriety. I tasted gifts of the program. I tasted fellowship. I could see how this does work. Do I think it could work for me? People don't have problems like I do. This is my deluded internal monologue. You don't have problems like I do. If you did, you would use too. You don't know what this is like. And, maybe it's not possible, but maybe it is. And what I wasn't aware of at the time as I was talking step 2, that I have this fraction of hope in me that maybe I can, even though the most of me is doubting it. All that mattered was that there was this fraction that thought it could be possible. And so step 2, the trick was, I couldn't quite lock down step 1 in my powerlessness to it all and just how quickly unmanageable Josh's life becomes anytime he introduces a substance into his life. And I'm using now to mend my broken heart, so to speak. And I think this is a few months. It's hard to remember, but it was a lot of drug use. And I remember just not wanting to do this. This is not how I want to live. I wasn't showing up for work. It was fully dedicated to try to heal my heart, heal my life through substances, and that wasn't working at all. And someone or something convinces me to go to a meeting, and I go to this very unorthodox recovery meeting called the Knights of the Round Table. And this is June 7th, 2008. And I am hating life. I am hating you. I am hating me. I am hating everything. But fuck it. I've got nowhere else to be. Let's just go. And I don't know what I was expecting or hoping for, looking for. I'm just there. Fuck these guys. They're all happy and shit. Bullshit. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and they break off into smaller little circles of people. You share about your week and how recovery and all that played a role. But what's different about that is you get feedback after you share. No other meeting offers feedback. It's just a safe space to share, and they thank you and on to the next person. I didn't say a fucking word through everybody's share. And I think it comes around to me. And the dude I'm sitting next to, he says, brother, I don't know what you're going through. Now, I haven't said a word, but I can actually feel your hatred just vibrating off of you. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what is happening, but you need to put the baseball bat down and pick up a feather. What the fuck does that mean? I was probably high, but pick up a feather. What the fuck? And so I leave thinking, what a fucking waste of time that was. I could have been using that whole hour, but it won't leave my brain. I'm driving home. What the fuck does that mean? I'm sitting home watching TV. What the fuck does that mean? And, the bat versus the feather. And, it dawns on me of I need to be a little bit easier on myself. That the solution isn't, I don't have the solution. The solution is these other guys. The solution is spiritual. Now, I dabbled and always had a foot and connection into recovery all through from leaving treatment to 2008 now. Just never really bought into any of it. But after a while, some of that shit starts to sink in, one day at a time, let go, let God, acceptance is the answer. I don't understand all of that, but as long as I could stay close to it. And I think part of that is part of what my mentality was, is I was too far away to drift away from the solution while I'm using. That should I one day decide, okay, now I want to be done, I didn't want to just be like, oh shit, but where is everybody? I've lost touch with all these guys and these connections that I had made in the rooms.
So that fellowship, you would say, is key in what was different this time around?
Has to be. How'd you do it, Josh? What's the answer? What's the key?
That is exactly
Fellowship.
what I would like to know, the fellowship.
I do not have my life. Everything I've spoken for here is a proof positive history of Josh doesn't know what the fuck to do, but these other guys do, anytime. And I would learn this later, but my problem wasn't the drugs. My problem wasn't the alcohol. My problem was Josh. My problem was the thing between my two ears, and how I perceived and how I tried to analyze and think and come up with solutions. That's the problem. And so I decide to, for the first time ever in my existence of using drugs, flush what meth I have down the drain. And that was the last day I'd ever touched a drug. June 7th, 2008. I got back involved in the rooms. I had to be more intentional with it. There was no just 1 foot in, 1 foot out. There was no just, I'm going to show up to these meetings and absorb this knowledge through osmosis. There was no, okay, now just be sober. No, there was action that had to be put into it. And that's what, step 1 teaches us. I am powerless over any and all substances. What I learned through this trial and error and my own research was that it doesn't matter if it is this substance, that substance, the other substance. Josh can't touch any of it because it will always, that road always leads back to the substance of choice. Always. You could feed me salads every day of my life. And yes, my body would get the nutrition and the energy and all that. But I'm going to tell you, eventually, I want a fucking pizza. That's my food of choice. To me, that's the same analogy then when it comes to cross addiction, whether it's this substance, that substance. I will always go back to my substance of choice. It took many years to learn that one. And I bet you someone in treatment told us this. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I missed that one. But when I finally realized it, it was life-changing.
So a lot of what I'm hearing that worked for you, we just talked about the fellowship. A minute ago, you also mentioned spirituality. This time, a part of the difference this time was recognizing I can't do any of it. It's any of them they're all going to eventually lead back to the same thing. So those were obviously some of the big things that made the difference for you. What would your message be to someone hearing this right now who is in the midst of their own struggle, maybe one similar to yours? Would it be to seek out the fellowship? Would it be to seek out that higher power? What would your message be? If somebody's hearing this now and they're like, wow, this sounds like me, what would you say to them?
You don't know shit. You need to find people that do, right? I didn't know how to use those drugs. I didn't know to what, how much I could use of what, or how to take this, or I had to be shown those things. So it would make sense that to the opposite, I need to be shown how to live this life of sobriety. So for me, it is finding a group of men or women that are like-minded that then can support you through all of this. Those rooms, AA, NA, CA, all of those rooms are there so you can make those connections. Whatever you have been through, I can promise you there's somebody in there that knows that experience or is living it now. Those rooms are there to share in the joys and the accomplishments that you have in life, but they are also there to help divide the grief. That when I lose a loved one or I experience a setback in my life or I don't get the promotion or something in life goes life-ish, I guess, they're there to support me. I tell my patients all the time, life doesn't give a fuck you're trying to get sober. It is not going to lay down.
It'll keep doing what it's always done.
It's not going to, start pitching underhand to you suddenly. Yep. It is going to keep coming at you full
It won't change, so we have to change.
And life can be unfair. Life can be cruel at times. So I need to adjust accordingly. And that's where I start making the changes. And, there is nothing I have achieved that is my own achievement. It is hands down to the men and women that have come before me and that solid group of guys that I stay connected to now. That without them, I am not here. It was advised to me that I find about 5 guys that could become that core network of my support. Always an odd number, which I didn't quite understand, but that would be explained to me. But these 5 guys that know, and I would get to know them and build relationships with them, and they would understand, so that when I came across a life decision, an A or a B, this or that, I could turn to these guys and they could advise me. It was an odd number, so I would get...
There's no tie that's possible.
It was usually 5 against me. I'm saying, yeah, but what have you guys considered this? No, Josh, you're being an idiot again. But these guys know me. They know my personality. They know my mannerisms. They know my values. They know me, so that when I start acting and behaving out of step with that, they can call me on it. And I was advised to give them permission verbally. I give you permission to call me out on my shit at any point.
And that's love. That's actually love. A lot of times people mistake for love people who will tell them everything that they want to hear. They will never have a disagreement with them. They'll never shoot down their foolish ideas. Right. What love actually is someone who cares about you enough to be like, that's a horrible idea, right, and you absolutely should not do that.
People that are willing to tell you the truth. And we don't always like the truth. But the truth is the truth. And there's no denying that. And as I would learn that it wasn't these substances that were the problem, it was my way of thinking and my perception. I needed help seeing those things, getting other people's perceptions of things that I didn't see from my vantage point. Those are the ones that save me. It had been clearly evident Josh doesn't know how to do this. And so there reaches this level, and they talk about it in the rooms of AA a lot, but the gift of desperation, which seems asinine. How could being desperate ever be a gift? But when you are desperate for a solution and willing to go to any length for it, you'll start seeing results. And it's not going to be shit you want to do. I don't want to go to meetings all the time.
But if you have that fire lit, you will make it happen.
There's
regardless.
Nothing that can get in your way.
And desperation, that's exactly it. We hear that word and we assume people automatically hear it in a negative context. If you take that and you harness it, that desperation is fuel to do the things that you need to get done.
There's nothing that could stand in your way. And so having these guys, group of men, and having a set routine, I didn't want to do a lot of these things, to help feed and nurture and grow my recovery, but I was told they were necessary. And I was asking them for help. So to dismiss it, ignore it, lie about doing it, and not do it was only hurting myself. And so that's where that desperation, that fire comes in. I am finally willing to go to any length. I will do whatever. If it means praying, meditating, going to these meetings, having service commitment, just reaching out and calling people so that I can have live human connection, then I will do it. Because what my disease how it manifests itself is into a very isolating, lonely, despairing world where nobody could possibly understand. But there are millions of people that understand. I've just got to have the courage to kind of let them in and talk about the things that bother me, the things that, have hurt me, the things that have held me back. And so, that honesty, there's a reason why it's a core foundation to, the recovery program, because without it, what's the point?
How long into your recovery did you become a counselor? What was that journey like?
So as I mentioned, I was still using heroin, going to get my bachelor's degree.
You were using heroin, getting your bachelor's degree
yeah.
in what field?
So I thought I love teaching.
Okay.
I love passing on knowledge. And I love history as a subject. Always have. I get that from my grandfather. And so the idea is let's get the certification education to be a high school history teacher. I've had some impactful teachers in my life. I would love to be able to do that for, someone else. And so getting my undergrad in history was a breeze because I love history, but also I've seen most of this stuff. I watched, these documentaries on my free time anyway. So that was a breeze. Gets to the point where, okay, Josh, you need to start your student teaching, and that is being on a high school campus all day, 5 days a week. You can't work during that because you're doing this. What the fear is, oh shit, how am I going to afford heroin? And so like a good drug addict, I change my goal rather than my behavior. Let's just take this degree in history so I can continue to do what I'm doing. And I get this degree in history that I have no idea how to use, and I'm still using, but okay, I'm eventually sober. 2 years sober. I'm loving life, loving recovery, everything that goes into it. I'm starting to sort of mentor and sponsor other guys. They're looking up to me, reaching out to me, asking for answers and guidance. And I have a job, but it's just that it's a job. And the idea comes in like, I want a career. And so, oh shit, I've started this path for a career. Now we're sober. We can go finish that. Like we can student teach now. That's easy. Doesn't matter. I don't need to buy heroin anymore. And so I go back to the college to sign up for my student teaching. Everything's good to go. Let's go start student teaching. And probably for the first time, I hardly doubt it was really the first time, but I think this higher power speaks to me and says, you should go across the hall and inquire about getting a master's in substance abuse counseling. I'm loving recovery, anything recovery. I'm reading anything I can about recovery and substance abuse. So yeah, it makes sense. Let's fuel that. And I didn't know if I could get a master's in something completely separate. Sure, yeah, of course you can, okay, well, let's sign up for more schooling. And from that very first class, this would have been about 2010, I knew that this was my higher power's will for me. This was that reason, those people standing next to my bed saying everything happens for a reason, Josh. God has a plan. That this was that plan. That graduate program came so easy to me. It just laid down in front of me. I think from beginning to end, I finished it in about 14 months, and that's with an internship. There were no obstacles, and when there were, they were easy solutions to them. Getting my fingerprint clearance card was something I feared would be this huge barrier, but a simple letter to the courts and boom, here you go, here's your card. I kept getting these reassurances that, yeah, this is the path, kid. This is the path. You love passing knowledge. This is a way to do that. And so I finished graduate school, 2012 probably. And within 2 weeks, I've got my first job at Community Bridges, working drug court with a bunch of felons. Probably one of the greatest jobs I've had.
I love drug court. I love what it is and what it does. I love that it recognizes that a lot of these people are not violent criminals. These are people that have a substance use issue and that they will not benefit and society will not benefit from them being sent into a prison where they then have to adapt. They have to become violent or whatever to survive. Then they're sent back out into society.
Right.
Whereas this is like, okay, we're giving you a chance here to address what is underneath this. And we're not going to send you there, but here is your chance. Little sidebar there. I'm a big fan of people getting that option to go to drug court.
Been doing this as a career for over 10 years or more, and it's still one of my favorite jobs. We got to go to court if we wanted to. It wasn't part of their job description, but me and the peer support, we would go to court to go sit in the back room of the courtroom and talk about, who was up on the docket for the day and give our advice about, no, don't penalize this guy yet. Yes, he had a dirty UA, but he's really trying. Let's just keep, this guy, he's just using the system. And they really had real power and influence there to do good from a drug addict's point of view who, feared all that stuff,
So from drug court, where did it go from there? What did that look like?
I think the hope and dream was always to get that phone call from Calvary Healing Center to get to be able to...
Where we actually went through ourselves, a full circle moment.
Full circle, to be able to give back. And tried, get on to on-call work, which would have been around June of 2014, and progressed up through there, worked all the different departments, and... that was super powerful. My office ended up being in the very same building where the first lecture was that I ever attended, where I was facilitating my groups was in the same room as my very first lecture as a patient, 10 feet away. True full circle. Anytime I want to believe that I haven't made any progress in life, that one has always been a quick, you can't deny.
That's a good reminder of where you've come from.
For sure. And just being able to relate then with the patients. I know what it's like to sleep in those beds. I know what it's like, this isn't going to be the end of the world for you. You can do this.
I know what it's like to be washing the dishes in the kitchen.
Yeah, I know what it's like to have the chore, and trust me, this is not as bad as it could be. And worked there for, 10 plus years. And I'm about to start on this new journey at Guiding Road Recovery here in a couple weeks, doing the same thing as a PHP therapist. I love this place and their mission. They are not bashful about utilizing AA and the 12 steps to implement into their curriculum. AA and the 12 steps is a proven, evidence-based system, been around since 1935. It works for tens of millions of people. Let's get into using this. And they use other evidence-based modalities as well, but to be able to, without any hesitation, absolutely, here is the solution. Do it or don't. It's your choice. So thrilled.
You mentioned, by the way, when we were talking about drug court, you were obviously talking about how rewarding that was to do that in the drug court, and then moving on to what you've been doing the last decade and what you're about to be doing now. What is the most rewarding part about the work that you do, and what is the most challenging?
Challenging is you're dealing with people like us, right? I know what this asshole's doing.
I wrote the book on this.
Yeah. And I get and maybe it's just because I'm older now and there's been some maturity, but I relate to what they're saying. I don't find it appealing anymore. But the challenging part is, seeing someone just kind of expecting it all to come to them and not realizing, yep, this is going to take some work and effort. It's not a lot of work. You gotta go sit in a meeting for an hour and listen.
And it's not complicated work either, because complicated does not work for people who have been struggling with addiction and alcoholism. It is not complicated. It is simple, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to take the steps and do the work.
My sponsor's going to ask me to do 12 steps. There's going to be some questions and some inner work, but it's all about me. So I know the answers. It's not like I got to go look this shit up anywhere. And be of service, so that might involve making coffee at a meeting or being a greeter or putting away some chairs. Trust me, it could be a lot worse. And if I do that stuff long enough, I will find myself with this foundation for the rest of my life. So seeing them just be really hesitant on that and lazy, if you will, bothers me. That's challenging, but I relate to it. But the most rewarding by far is getting those phone calls from someone a couple years later. Hey, I'm still doing it, still doing great. I got one this morning, a text from someone that I was working with at Calvary about a patient who wanted to check in with me, heard I'd left, but wanted me to know that here, a year and a half later, they're still doing great and want to come help be of service any way they can,
And see, that cycle continues. They come and they give it back to someone else who makes their way through and grows and heals and matures, and then they come back and give it back, and it just perpetuates itself.
I tell them a lot that, there is this pain that you're experiencing today does have a purpose to it. It's hard to see it now because you're in the middle of it, but one day you'll see what all of it was about. And that right now somebody is out there that needs your help, and the universe will guide you, and you will be put in front of each other one day to be able for you to be of service to that person and help save their life.
Your story about being in the hospital bed and the people standing next to you telling you there's a plan here, I think that's such a perfect example of that, to where, anybody in your shoes in that moment would probably, as a young man, paralyzed from the waist down, being told that would probably be like, what plan is coming out of this? But for you then to see, and then when it clicked with you, like, this is why, this was the point. It's so important for the people that are in the midst of their own battle right now to be hearing that, to recognize it takes time. You might not see it now, but there will be a point and a purpose.
Promise. You're in it. It's hard to see it, but it isn't just because life enjoys kicking the shit out of us, And I think it's the Buddhists that talk about the difference between pain and suffering. Life is painful, comes with its bumps and bruises, it's hard lessons, and that's inevitable. There's no avoiding that pain. But the suffering is voluntary. That's what the shit that
it's a choice. It's a choice.
The choices that we make, the decisions and the actions that we take can take it quickly from just painful lesson to complete suffering. And I acknowledge that. I would agree that they're looking at my life. There were choices, decisions I make that made this go from pain to suffering, and it totally unnecessary. The lesson was there to learn. It was a painful one, but based on my decisions and my actions, it now had become suffering. And it doesn't have to be like that. Hard to see it now because you're in it, and it sucks, and it's hurtful, and it doesn't ever feel like it's going to get better. But I swear it does. But not on its own. I do have to take some steps. And it's usually just those first few steps that become game changers.
Even that step of, I'm finally going to make a phone call to somebody I trust and sit down and go, listen, I'm really struggling right now. That alone, opening the door, and what has to happen before that is you have to recognize that you have a problem.
Sure.
Obviously. But sometimes picking up that phone to make that initial phone call, the phone feels like it's 100 pounds. But when you do that, I have not met a person yet who has made that phone call who didn't feel even a little bit of hope, some kind of positive change after finishing that phone call.
Yeah.
Like maybe something can come out of this.
And we've talked about it a long time. These steps, this program works for a lot of things. So even if you aren't quote unquote alcoholic drug addict, there's some improvement that I think it can be done for a lot of people.
Life in general. I don't think that these steps need to be exclusive to people who have struggled with substances or, there's a lot of 12-step things that are related to gambling or sex or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't need to fall into any of those categories to benefit from doing these things.
Learning to open your heart to a spiritual component that, it's not just all about you. Look, I get it. Everybody's problems are their problems and they seem insurmountable, but God doesn't give you more than you can handle, and it feels impossible and feels like that is a lie. But I can tell you firsthand that, that checks out. It's this problem. My wheelchair is a unique one. I've come to see that it's not any bigger or smaller than anybody else's. We all have our own problems, quote unquote, challenges in life. I look at single parents and think, bless your heart, I don't know how you do it. I'm not strong enough to do that. But I understand that there's people out there that might look at someone in a wheelchair and be like, bless your heart, don't know how you do that. So I think there's got to be some divine calculation here that knows our inner self, that we are strong enough to be able to get through these things, and hey, so be it. Maybe even help then teach others, because if I can learn to deal with this, 45 years old in a wheelchair, just living my life that I thought would be impossible, then I think you can get through whatever you're going through. And having been in this field 10 plus years, but also personally been around the rooms of recovery now, I guess 20 something years, like I've seen that evidence now too. It's not just wishful thinking. I think this might be a great theory, but I've seen these things in practice. I see what works. I see what doesn't. I see what people go through in their life, in their own journey. And when they conquer those things and learn to live with them and make them no longer the things holding them back, but now use them as assets. Okay.
The very things that I looked back at, or that I looked at the time as giant mistakes and tremendous flaws, and there were plenty of things that were legitimately bad mistakes, bad decisions. The grace of God, my higher power, has turned those things into a platform that has allowed me to have the understanding and the empathy and say, oh, I did that too. I know exactly what that feels like. And when you can then take that and you can use the things that you felt guilt and remorse and all those, and then it becomes an asset to where you're seeing someone else breathe a little bit easier because they recognize that they're not alone. Yeah. That is one of the biggest gifts in recovery. It takes time. It takes work. Like you said, you can't sit back and wait for it to happen to you, but it absolutely does happen.
I wanted a new life, right? I wanted a kind of reset button, if you will. That wasn't going to be just handed to me because I wanted it, right? There was going to be some work to put into it to be able to make changes in my life. I feel I got that reset, if you will. I'm still very much the person I was before, personality, humor, all that stuff. A lot of same values. But I got that restart. There was just some work to put into it. And there is an admission price, if you will, that we have to pay to get that new life. Being through it now, I look back on that stuff I had to pay, all the ups, the downs, that was my admission price to getting here. And
it's worth it.
Looking at it now from the other end, I'd go through it 3 times over. Turns out it wasn't as bad as I was making it out to be.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything I may have overlooked before we wrap this up?
You're not alone, find purpose. I think me stumbling on to the education point and doing this, the therapy and the counseling stuff for a life, a career was a tremendous asset. That made recovery, staying sober, everyday life, there was now a purpose to it. There was this fire that was now lit and nothing was going to put it out. Okay, now I have that. So I've had to find other things in life, joys, follow your bliss, so to speak. And so I've really gotten into painting lately. Didn't know, wasn't looking for it, just really enjoy it. Starting to monetize that in a little bit. untamedsanctuary.com, check it out.
We'll put that in the description.
But, finding your purpose. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. Just start trying shit. Which leads to you just living a life. I wasn't going to find my purpose sitting on a couch with foil in my hand. It wasn't going to dawn on me. I had to get out there and try shit. Even if it was, while I was using, I was doing stuff, I was laying groundwork for that big reveal so that when I was 2 years sober, here you go, this is what it was all about. So finding a purpose in life, I can't describe exactly how that has changed everything and the perspectives I have.
Our guest today has been Josh Anderson. Once again, Josh is a therapist, a budding painter, and an individual 17 years in long-term recovery. Josh, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience with us on Silver Ladder.
My pleasure.
Thanks once again to our guest, and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it on social media and with your personal network. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, or would like to suggest a guest or topic for a future episode, please email us at podcast@silverladder.com. If you need resources related to mental health support or treatment, please visit silverladder.com and select Resources from the toolbar menu. And finally, if you have questions about or are interested in setting up a presentation, consulting, peer support, or family support services, please email contact@silverladder.com. Please note that Silver Ladder is not a crisis resource and is not staffed or monitored 24/7. Thank you for listening to Silver Ladder.